Hi everybody, this is Rob, the project master at YoroAdventures.com. Today I'm going to be replacing an axle on my front left tire. If you haven't seen the video yet, please pause and go over to the video titled All Hail the Trail, the Hail and Broken Axle Fail, and you'll see what happened. In this video I'm going to go through why I chose this brand, where I got it, the price I paid, what I learned by doing research. Hopefully if you're in this situation you'll know why I chose this axle and be able to purchase based off of my recommendation. This is my first time doing an axle replacement. I've been doing research online, finding a tremendous amount of resources on how to do this process, and so hopefully you'll learn along with me and take something away from this video. I'm also going to be posting a video on the review of this axle. I did buy an East Lake OEM replacement axle. They were very friendly to ask questions to, but in the review video I'll cover more about the axle itself. Well, this is a standard axle that the Polaris has, and what happened was as I was turning, the axle buckled and snapped at the knuckle. Okay, this may be common knowledge for almost everybody out there, but this is just in case for those who may not know. The Polaris Sportsman comes with a 14 millimeter lug nut that you have to remove. Now the trick to this is just making sure the vehicle's on the ground, don't jack it up, and loosen the lugs while it's on the ground so that way you don't have to lock down the tires while doing it. I'm going to go ahead and remove the lug nuts. The other idea about doing it on the ground is also that way if you need to break the nuts loose, you can do it without having to have a second person. Okay, because I don't have an extended jack, I'm just using a regular 1 ton, I think it's actually 1.5 ton jack, and putting 2x4s so that way it's extended. I'm going to be jacking it up now. I'm taking the lug nuts off now. What I'm going to have to do in this is remove the spacers and the lift kit that I had put in. Some of you folks may be wondering why I just don't get the heavy duty axles and be done with it. I'm going to have to take them off anyways to remove the axles, number one. Number two, I'd rather take that, let's say $1,000 that I would need to probably putting in heavy duty axles, and put that towards a trip somewhere so we can go riding. Usually I reserve the winter months when I'm not riding to do things like put heavy duty axles on or save up money so that way I can be ready for that piece of my upgrades. Because I'm a firm believer of safety, I also like to use jack stands. The jack stands just make sure that not all the weight of the vehicle is sitting on the jack, that if I start tugging on it, it's not going to come tumbling over. So I highly recommend it. It's a small investment, especially if you buy them at a flea market or a garage sale or even Harbor Freight. So what I'm doing now is taking the rubber end cap off. Super easy, just take a flathead screwdriver, pry on it a little bit, and with your hand you should be able to take it off. I'm going to go ahead and take the spacers off right now, and then remove the brakes, and then disconnect the axle and the A-arm from the assembly. So at this point, I'm removing the spacers. My spacers need to be removed with 11/16 socket. The only drawback to these spacers is that they're not machined as good as some of the other ones out there. I wish they were a little bit closer to being machined, but I don't see any points of wear, so I'm not going to say that they're completely horrible, but then again, I've only put one season on them. I don't know what they would do. And there's a spacer. This one, I believe, is a 1.5 inch spacer. And looking at the threads and looking at where everything's sitting, I'm not seeing where it's been slipping and moving on me, so it should be pretty good. So I got the front guard off of the axle. I wanted to kind of show you maybe a little bit better what the axle is doing. Do you hear that? It's loose. And that's just done by hand. So next step is going to be removing the brake pads. So I took this off with a 1/2 inch socket. There's a bolt on the top right there and one down here on the bottom. Now in all the videos that I've watched, they recommend taking the brake pads off on some. Others they don't. It just seems like a pain in the ass to have to compress a brake pad just to take, hold on, let me make sure these washers stay together. To take the brakes off, especially if I'm not changing the pads. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I promise I'll get better at this. A lot harder than it looks doing it with the camera and by yourself, so okay. Of course, manufacturers don't make things easy. There's not a lot of room for a socket. Let's see here. Okay, I think that's loose. Yep. So what I ended up having to do is just hammer it off. The brake pads are still fairly new, so I'll have to reposition that piston in the middle, which is right here. And I'll push it in just to give me a little bit more clearance to put it back on. And then I'm just putting the brakes up like that to keep them from hanging. Rule of thumb is you never want your brakes just to hang. Putting pressure on the line. The line's very delicate. But other than that, that's pretty much all I got. So the next piece is take this cotter pin off and which are super easy to get off. So what you do is you get a pair of pliers. I like to use these dikes because they have a flat tip, and I'll flatten them out like so. Now the cotter pin is there really just as a last line of defense to keep the bolt from, or the nut from backing off of the bolt. but they're super easy to get off. The next thing I like to use sometimes, I'll use needle nose pliers. To pull them off. Some people are really good at this and pull the pin so you don't destroy it, but I don't know, I recommend replacing it anyway, so I'll get a new pin. And then there's also a cotter pin on the bottom. Now, cotter pins are easy to find. I actually buy most of mine either at the AutoZone or O'Reilly's or whatever is in your area. But I also like to go to Tractor Supply. Every once in a while they have cotter, they have a better selection. So you can get ones that match, and I'll take these with me so I get the exact same size. But next is I'm going to have to remove this bolt here. So I'm going to have to remove the cap bolt. I don't know what you call it, but I'm going to call it cap bolt. I'm going to have to remove that, and then we're going to have to remove the brakes from the unit, I believe. If not, maybe it all comes out. We'll try it out, see what happens. Okay, so came off really easily. Pulled the cap off using this bad boy here. You can see there's lots of grease in there, but what I'm specifically looking for is burrs or chitters or just anything that shows signs of damage. So I don't know. I know it doesn't show well on the video, but it looks like it's in really good shape. So the axle causing breaking away didn't cause any problems. Okay, for those who are keeping track, had to use a 24mm 3/4 inch socket, and it took me just wedging a long screwdriver on one side to keep it from spinning, and just didn't take a lot of force to pull it off. But you do want to keep these parts together, so I have the washer and the nut right there. Take the bottom piece off. This is to the ball joint, and it just keeps your camber and your articulation in toe or straight. I actually didn't take a lot of force to take it off. Okay. So now I can separate the A-arm from the rest of the suspension. Okay, so what I used was a jack just to pick this piece up here to separate the A-arm, so that way it came off the pin. I inspected the ball joint. It looks like it's intact, no problems. So as you can see how easy this is, I'm gonna pull the shock out and separate the shock from the axle, right, like that. So it's pretty broken. I'm going to go ahead and remove the axle, but the one thing I was looking for was pieces broken, and it doesn't look like it. So the only piece is in the knuckle here, and we'll cut it open so I can show it to you. Okay, so I got it removed. Now there's lots of ways I found online to do this. All of it seems pretty straightforward. Some of them say you could pull. You can just tug on it, but my problem is I got my ATV on a jack stand, so I didn't want to pull and then knock it over. So what I opted to do is I took a vice grip, clamped it down as tight as I can get it, and then took a large mallet and just whacked at the end of it about 4 or 5 times, and it popped right out. So this is the old axle. I will go through the new one here in a moment. Okay, so here's the axle. The old right here and the new one. I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Okay, a couple things I learned is you're going to want to make sure there's no debris in there, which feels like there is. Mainly rocks. I don't know why there's rocks in there, but there's rocks. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on there. Let me just get the dirt off my hands. And get a little bit of grease on there. And I don't want to put much, just enough to just give it some lubrication. I've been looking online. There's been a couple channels that say put grease, others say don't. So I'm gonna do just slide them out. It should be a dry, like this one's dry, but I'm just looking for enough lubrication just to help me out and help the axle. So just line up the splines, and then you put it in. Okay, it just clicked right in there. I just pushed on it. Next is to put it all back together. So at one point I was a dumbass and stripped one of my posts. I don't know if you can see this, but that one is good. There. That one is bad. Essentially, when they say don't force a nut on a bolt, that's precisely why. I think it was a field repair. I don't quite remember why, but I stripped a post, so we all do stupid things. I'm going to be removing that here in a moment. Okay, so I took another and was able to, but now I have to remove, isn't quite clear. So the assembly. I'll be right back. So I took the bad post out. I bought, in the world of Amazon, I bought a new one. You can see if it says it's supposed to fit this machine, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. Really simple to do. You just literally, so I can do this one-handed. You match up the splines, goes right in. So I got the new one on there. It's right there. All I did is put a screw, or I'm sorry, the nut on, and then torqued it down until it seated all the way and it was straight. Before I go any further, because this is something that I tend to do a lot of, is I will do a project and forget something else is broken. So I'm just making sure that this fits on all the threads properly. And I can probably screw it all the way down, but just the fact that it starts without any friction means that it's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to put the disc brake back on. So this was, let me see here if I can go back here. Okay, this went on just like so, like right here. Right. Okay. So everything lines up. I'm going to put the bolts back through. I know they use blue Loctite. I'm just going to torque them down. I don't think I have blue Loctite on me. But the best thing to do when you're assembling anything is just by hand. Get all the bolts in, so that way you know they're going in properly, so you don't strip threads. That's something I had to learn. Okay. Yep, there we go. And you get them started, and then I'll crank them down. I'll be right back. See, the disc brake's back on. Got these all torqued down. And then it's time to put everything back together. Okay, so I put everything back on. I greased the ever-loving hell out of it. I'll line it back up. It's not quite perpendicular, but pretty much everything that I found online says the easiest thing to do is put this nut back on it, get it going, thread it, let it pull each other together, and then you should have a pretty nice mate to it. Okay. I'm not putting a lot of pressure. I'm afraid that if something's not lined up, I want to catch it before it causes problems. But so far so good. I could probably do this with 2 fingers, see. There it goes. Okay, so now it's on there, and it's time to put everything else back together. Okay, so if you've never done brakes, brakes are actually really easy to do. It's something that people pay a lot of money to get done, and it's pretty unnecessary. To give you the breakdown of the brakes, you have right here your pad, your outer and your inner pads. You have your caliper spring right here, and what this does is there's it's just a piston that guides the pressure plate back and forth. This is the pressure plate here, right there, and then this is the piston head. Now the piston head, when you push the brake, it shoves this little piston and pushes the brake pads together, which causes it to stop. So I put the brakes back on using that little trick I told you about. Again, that piston, the way it works is just to push those 2 brake pads together and create friction to stop. And with everything on there, it should want to move freely. Now, the one thing I did do is there's a cap right here, and it takes a 5mm Allen wrench. For some reason, my measured Allen wrenches are missing, so I just went ahead and found one that fits. And what that cap does is it helps relieve pressure and allows this thing to compress a little bit further. It's only maybe a 1/2 inch long. So it's not a screw, it's more like a cap. But let's see if I can get this. But the thing that I think about as I'm working on projects is there's somebody out there who had to figure out how all this stuff should work in the most efficient, in the most economical, as well as fail-safe. Because you know, if you build something, you have to have it last. Just think, this little cap probably was a solution to some big problem where these guys and gals who were engineering these machines didn't realize they needed it to be there, or they could have always known. But these are just some of the things I think about as I'm working on projects. As well as, why did they pick an Allen head over a bolt head? So I got it in there. I'm not going to over tighten it. I'm afraid that it's going to be too tight. Matter of fact, it is. And how I know, see how it changed the amount of play that's in there. So I'm going to back it off. Probably 2 full turns, but it's kind of hard to gauge. That's approximately 3/4. It's taking me to about a 1 1/4. Okay, yeah, there we go. So I don't want it loose enough to rattle. I just want it loose enough. It's an adjustment as well for your pads, because you're going to get bigger pads. You're going to get, new pads are a little bit bigger. What's he going to do? It's have that sucker rattling around. Okay, so I can squeeze my brakes, build pressure back up. Okay, build pressure's back up, and it's back to where it needs to be. The rest of it is just put the tire back on. So I hope you enjoy this build. I'm going to actually stop here. Mainly, the biggest reason is I have to take this. Well, I had to take the spacer off, but I'm going to take all 4 off. I'm also going to take out the lift kit that I put in, and let me see if I can switch to a different angle here. So I'm going to take out this lift kit that I put up here. It's a 2-inch spacer, and once I get it all pulled out, I'll show you all the parts to it and do a review. But this is the spacer, this is the cap that goes on top of the spring. Basically, it gives me an extra 2 inches of wheel travel, but I have to take that out. The reason I'm not going to include it in this video is I have to take all the plastics off. It's kind of a pain in the ass. But what I promised you was an axle replacement. Got the new axle in. Everything's in properly. Everything's lubed. I have it. It does turn, as you can see there. Has no play, which is good. So I'm back on the road once I get the tires switched out. Everything done. This video is probably longer than it probably should have taken. In total time to get everything in and out. If I knew what I was doing, and had not forgotten axle grease, this thing would have probably taken me about 45 minutes to do, and that's with me trying to contemplate life a little bit and figure out what's going on. Maybe an hour. It is not a big repair. It is not something that the average Joe can't do. It's something that dealerships, as well as certain mechanics, make you believe that the only way to get something done is through them. I find that unless there's something that you're uncomfortable about and you're a little adventurous, if you're a little adventurous, you can do about 80% of the work. If you're not, and you don't have any tools and you don't know what the hell you're doing, yeah, I can see this as being something you want to hire somebody to do. But I just saved myself about $100, $130 with tax. I'm just ballparking it in labor, not to mention the parts. They would have had to, they would have told me that they would have had to have shop fees of another $20 or $30. I would have asked them to replace my post, which the post that they quoted me and the labor was something like $23 for the part, maybe $20, and then a quarter of an hour. So it would have cost me another $60-$70. So by me doing this, I spent $67 on this wonderful East Lake axle. Came 2 days shipping. Paid $6.99 for the post replacement on Amazon because I wanted an OEM brand, not an offshoot brand. Went ahead and got new nuts for it, which was another $6.99. So we're going to round it up. 70 plus another, let's call it 80. And then cotter pin replacements, grease, everything else, maybe, let's add another $5. So $85, got it all done. I would have probably spent at least $100 more, and that's being fair. The biggest thing for me is I'm willing to try anything. This was my first time doing an axle. I did spend a little bit of time watching videos, see what they were doing and see if there was any major hang-ups. But truthfully, I gotta probably figure this out without watching one damn video. Other than that, this is the entire video. Again, there's East Lake axle. I did a review. Look for the video. Feel free to ask questions, add comments. I'll be posting more videos as we go along of different things that I do. But I hope this helps. And if you need anything else, please feel free to reach out to a fellow rider. Most riders have had experience in this stuff. Reach out to us on our website or Facebook or YouTube. Comment, like. Feel free to follow, subscribe. All the wonderful internets of things to do. And we're greatly appreciated. We're a new channel. We're a new website, new company. Some exciting things are coming. You'll find us promoting a little bit more on the ridership end of the business. But keep an eye out for more videos like this, and hope everybody has a great day and evening. This is Rob with Yoro Adventures. Thank you.